Hello there, thank you for stopping by the channel. Today's story explores the hidden corners of the human psyche, gentle, yet profound. Stay tuned, and don't forget to support the channel so you won't miss the next stories. I never thought I'd be in a situation like this. Honestly, I always thought I was too smart for it. But here I am, sitting alone in my living room, trying to wrap my mind around what happened. My name's Lily, I'm 30 years old, and I really need to just get this off my chest. It all started last month, when my boss, the one who seems to know all the right people, invited me to a concert. Not just any concert though, a VIP experience with backstage passes and everything. Obviously, I was excited. It's the kind of thing most people could only dream about, and I was getting this chance because of my work. I mean, I deserve it, right? I work hard, and I've earned some fun, some luxury, right? Anyway, I told my husband David about the invitation, and he was kind of indifferent. He always plays it cool, but I could tell something was off. He wasn't excited like I was. He didn't even seem thrilled I was getting this opportunity. Still, I didn't think much of it. He's always been a bit of a homebody, doesn't like going out much unless it's to the bar with his buddies or whatever. His loss, honestly. But here's where it gets interesting. David wasn't exactly supportive, but he didn't put up a fight either. He just kind of shrugged it off and said, "Yeah, go if you want." He was acting like he didn't care, and that irritated me a little. I wasn't expecting a parade or anything, but a little more enthusiasm would have been nice. He could have at least pretended he was happy for me. Instead, he acted like I was going to a dentist appointment. So I went to the concert. I was gone the whole night, and I'll admit I had a blast. I was living it up in that VIP section, getting free drinks, chatting with people who actually mattered in this world. And I'm not even going to lie, I felt good. I mean, sure, David was home with the kids, but I wasn't thinking about him. I was too busy being treated like a queen by everyone else. By the time I got home, it was around 2 a.m. I was a little tipsy, maybe a little too tipsy, but who cares, right? I'd had a great time, but when I walked in the door, David was sitting on the couch. I figured he'd be asleep by then, but nope, he was wide awake, just sitting there, looking at me with this look I can't even describe. Like, I don't know, almost disappointed. He didn't say anything right away, just stared at me. And I was just standing there in my concert gear, still holding on to the high of the night. I should have felt guilty. He'd been home with the kids while I was out partying, but I didn't. I wasn't even thinking about that at the time. All I could think about was how amazing the night had been and how stupid David was acting. He could have at least asked me how it went, right? But instead of a "how was the concert?" or "did you have fun?" he handed me an envelope, a letter. I looked at him, confused. "What's this?" I asked, already knowing it wasn't good. He wasn't the type to hand me letters, especially not at 2 in the morning.
UNC, he said, hisi vosi forlat, lai he wasn't even chang toke anymore. Một open the letter, it wasn't long đến ghi si anh few sentences si đến bắt it hit me like anh ton opposite. The letter si anh not from David, and it was si about how he didn't feel opposite anymore. How he feel like he was si anh bắt zone ke zit in me lap, and how he been getting more and more distant.
I could feel the guilt starting to creep in, but honestly, it didn't stick. I remember reading it and thinking, this is stupid. I mean, I had just come off this high from the concert, and now here I was, standing in front of my husband, who was acting all dramatic over a letter. I didn't know how to respond. I didn't even think I needed to respond. Why was he making such a big deal out of nothing? "I don't get it," I said, putting the letter down. "This is about me going to a concert, maybe," he said, not looking at me. "Maybe it's about how you never put me first anymore. You always go out, always have fun, but I'm just stuck here with the kids. It's like, I don't even matter." I rolled my eyes. "Oh, come on, David, you're acting like I never do anything for you. I work, I take care of the house, and now you're mad because I went to a concert." "A work thing, by the way." He didn't say anything for a second. Then he finally looked me dead in the eyes. "You've been doing this a lot lately, going out, not caring about what's going on at home." You don't even notice. Maybe I'm just tired of pretending like it doesn't bother me. The word stung a little, but I couldn't show it. I wasn't wrong. I deserved that night out. So why was he making it about something else? Why couldn't he just let me have fun? I just shook my head. Look, David, I don't know what you're trying to say, but I'm not going to sit here and feel bad for going to a concert. I'm not going to apologize for having a good time. He stood up like he was done with the conversation and walked into the other room. I could hear him sighing from the next room, and I felt this little stab of frustration. Why is he making me feel guilty for something I didn't even do wrong? But I didn't care, not then. I was too busy thinking about the concert, about everything I'd missed out on. David could be mad if he wanted, but this was my life, my opportunity. So I let him sulk in the next room. I didn't even bother trying to talk to him anymore. What was the point anyway? That's when the night ended, and looking back, maybe there were a few signs that I messed up. But I didn't really see it that way at the time. I was having fun, and that's all that mattered to me. So yeah, that's where we are right now, and I'm just getting started. The next day, things weren't any better. David was still distant, still moody. And I honestly had no idea what to do about it. He wasn't talking to me, wasn't looking at me the same way. It was like he was giving me the silent treatment. But I wasn't about to chase him down. I had things to do, and I sure as hell wasn't going to let this whole thing mess up my vibe. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized he wasn't just mad about the concert. It was something deeper. I'd been feeling like things had been off between us for a while now. But I didn't think much of it, maybe because I didn't want to. Maybe because I was too busy with my own life to care. He'd been distant, sure, but I figured he'd get over it. Men were like that, right? They got moody, needed their space, and then they'd come around. That's how it always worked. But by the time the kids were in bed that night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. David was sitting there like he'd been waiting for me to finally confront him. I wasn't ready to apologize, but I also wasn't about to let him think he could hold this over my head forever. So I sat down across from him, trying to act calm. But it was hard. I could feel the tension in the room. All right, what's really going on, David? I asked, crossing my arms. I wasn't going to beg for his attention, but at this point, I was done with the cold shoulder. He didn't even look at me at first, just kept staring at the TV like I wasn't even there, and that pissed me off more than anything. Why was he acting like I was the problem? Like I wasn't the one who had been stuck at home with 2 kids while he was out doing whatever he wanted? I don't know. No, Lily, he said, finally turning his eyes to me. Maybe I'm just tired of being ignored. Tired of being your afterthought. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. It was that kind of laugh that comes from frustration, not amusement. Ignored? You've got to be kidding me. I'm busting my ass every day at work, taking care of the house, making sure the kids are all right, and you're sitting here acting like I don't do enough. I don't even know what you want from me at this point. I want you to actually care about what's happening here, he shot back, his voice rising a little. I want you to notice how distant we've become. I want you to look at me like I'm still your husband, not just the guy who pays the bills and takes care of things while you're out having fun. His words hit harder than I expected, but I wasn't about to let him see that. Oh, so now I'm the bad guy, I snapped. Because I went to a concert, because I had one night of fun without you. God, David, get over it. It was one night. I'm not the one who's been sitting here sulking about it for days. He threw his hands up in the air like he couldn't believe what he was hearing. It's not about the damn concert, Lily, it's about everything else. You think I don't notice how you've been pulling away? You think I don't see how much you've been spending without thinking? How many times do I have to say something before it finally clicks with you? I blinked. Spending? What was he talking about? I had some credit card debt, sure, but who didn't? I wasn't a financial genius, but it's not like I was blowing our entire savings. It was just the little things, the stuff I liked to buy for myself when I was feeling down. Was that really such a big deal? I don't know. Maybe you're just making a bigger deal out of this than it is, I said, trying to brush it off. I've got it under control, I always do. Because every time I check, there's another charge on our account for something you don't need. Another splurge that we can't afford. You're always getting things for you, but what about the kids? What about us? His words hit me harder than the guilt I had tried to ignore. But even then, I didn't fully grasp it. I just couldn't see what the problem was. I wasn't out there spending money like some kind of addict or anything. I deserved nice things. He didn't get it. You know what, David, I said, standing up. You really don't get it. I work hard, and I deserve a little something for myself once in a while. If you don't like how I spend my money, then maybe you should have been more involved with the bills. But don't make me feel bad for taking care of myself. You're the one who sits here acting all miserable, like I'm supposed to fix everything for you. His face twisted in anger. I'm not asking you to fix everything. I'm just asking for a little effort, a little attention. But maybe that's too much to ask. I could feel the wall between us getting thicker by the second. It was like we were both just talking past each other, neither of us willing to really listen. And then just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I saw it. The letter, the one I had thrown on the table the night before. It wasn't just a simple note, it was a list. A list of everything he felt I had been neglecting. The money, the time, the way I acted like I was too busy for him. And as I looked at it, I started to realize something. It wasn't just the concert. It wasn't just the spending, it was everything. The way I'd been pushing him away without even realizing it. But of course, I wasn't going to admit that to him, not yet. You're really going to make me feel guilty for this? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. You're really going to act like I'm the one who's wrong here? He looked at me, hurt written all over his face. But I didn't care. I couldn't admit it, not then. The argument continued, but it wasn't getting any better. I could feel the distance growing between us. And I wasn't sure how much more I could take of this. But I also wasn't ready to back down, not yet. The days that followed felt like a blur of tension. David barely said anything to me, and I barely said anything to him. It was like we were two strangers coexisting in the same house, but not really there. I spent more time at work, and when I was home, I buried myself in the kids' activities, or whatever I could do to avoid dealing with. The silence was suffocating, but neither of us knew how to break it. I kept thinking about that letter. The things he wrote in there had stuck with me more than I wanted to admit. He'd laid it all out so clearly, everything I was doing wrong. But even now, I refused to believe it was all my fault. Yeah, I had my moments of regret, but I wasn't about to let him win this one. I wasn't going to admit I'd been pushing him away because that would mean I'd have to take responsibility for everything that had gone wrong, and I wasn't ready to do that. I couldn't stop thinking about the concert, though. He was right in some ways. I'd been so excited to go to have a night just for myself. I'd thought, it's just a night out. But now, I couldn't help but feel like it had been more than that. Maybe it wasn't about the concert at all. Maybe it was about me wanting to escape. Wanting something else, anything other than this life I had. But the worst part, I had no idea how to fix any of it. I didn't know where to start, or even if I wanted to fix it. The kids were fine. They didn't care if we fought or not. They just wanted their dinner and their bedtime stories. But David, he was different. He wanted something from me and I wasn't sure I was ready to give it. The weekend came and David finally spoke to me again. But this time, it wasn't about us, it was about the money. I need you to take a look at this, he said, sliding a pile of bills in front of me at the kitchen table. His eyes were tired, and there was something almost defeated in his voice. We're sinking, Lily, you've got to stop ignoring it. I didn't even look at the bills at first. Instead, I stared at him. I could tell how frustrated he was, how much he was holding back. It was like he had been carrying this weight alone for months, and I hadn't noticed. I told you I've got it under control, I said, brushing off the problem. I'm doing what I can. But even as I said it, I knew it wasn't true. I knew it was a lie. I wasn't managing things. I was barely keeping my head above water. But admitting it felt like defeat, and I wasn't ready to admit defeat, not in front of him. Not after everything. You think I'm stupid? he asked, his voice cracking with frustration. You think I can't see what's happening? You've been spending money like we're made of it. We can't keep going like this, Lily. I sat there, staring at him, and for the first time in a long time, I felt it. The weight of the reality of what I'd been doing. But I didn't say anything. Instead, I just got up and left the room. I couldn't face it. I couldn't face him. For the rest of the day, we didn't talk. It felt like the space between us was growing wider, like we were on different planets. I couldn't figure out if I was angry at him for calling me out, or just embarrassed for letting things go this far. Either way, I wasn't ready to admit what I'd done. But then that night, something shifted. I was sitting on the couch, scrolling through my phone after the kids finally went to bed. The house was quiet, too quiet. David was sitting in the chair across from me. His eyes were on me, but his expression was unreadable. I couldn't take the silence anymore. You think I don't know how bad things are? I said, my voice shaking just a little. I know. But I don't know what you want from me. What do you want me to do? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he just stared at me, his face full of frustration and hurt. I want you to stop pretending like everything's fine, David said finally. I want you to actually care about what's happening to us because right now, it feels like you don't. It hit me harder than anything else, he had said. I had been pretending like everything was okay. Pretending like I didn't see the cracks forming. But I'd been so wrapped up in my own little world, in my own selfish impulses, that I hadn't noticed how bad it had gotten. And maybe, for the first time, I felt a little guilty. But not enough to really admit I was wrong, not yet. I'm sorry, okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But I don't know what else to do. I don't know how to fix this. He just nodded, looking defeated. I don't know either, Lily, but we can't keep going like this. I could feel the weight of his words, but I still wasn't ready to face the truth. Not yet, maybe later, but not now. I stood up and walked away from him. I didn't want to deal with it. I didn't want to face the consequences of my actions. Not yet, but somewhere deep down, I knew I had to. So I kept pretending, kept avoiding the inevitable. Because that's what I did best, but how long could I keep pretending? That was the question I didn't want to answer. The days following that tense conversation felt like they dragged on. And the more I tried to push the guilt aside, the heavier it became. I would catch myself staring at David, wondering if he could ever truly forgive me for everything I'd done. But at the same time, I wasn't ready to fully face it. I kept thinking that if I just kept going, kept pretending like everything was fine, maybe it would fix itself. But deep down, I knew it wouldn't. It never did. David kept his distance after that night. He wasn't rude, but there was this coldness in his eyes that I couldn't ignore. It was like he was a different person, someone who had learned to guard his emotions around me. I tried to act normal, tried to make small talk. But the silence between us felt heavier than it ever had before. And honestly, I didn't know what to say anymore. I'd pushed him so far, and I wasn't sure if he could ever come back from that. It was a few weeks later when I realized just how far apart we'd grown. It was a Saturday, and I was rushing around the house trying to get the kids ready for a birthday party. When David walked into the kitchen, his expression was unreadable. But I could tell something was different. The air between us felt charged with something I couldn't quite put my finger on. I need to talk to you about something, he said quietly, looking at me with those same tired eyes. I stopped what I was doing and gave him a nervous smile, trying to act casual. What's up? He hesitated before sitting down at the kitchen table. I've been thinking a lot, about everything. About what's been happening with us, with you. I could feel the knot in my stomach tightening. He was about to bring up the concert again, or the money, or both. And no matter what, I knew I wasn't going to like where this conversation was going. I know things haven't been perfect, I said, trying to get ahead of the conversation. But we'll figure it out, we always do. He shook his head slowly. I don't know if we will this time. I froze. What do you mean? I've been thinking about everything you did, David said, his voice low but steady. The concert, the way you've been spending money. The way you act like none of this matters. It's not just about the little things anymore, Lily. It's about the way you've treated me, the way you've treated us. I felt a lump form in my throat, but I didn't speak. I wasn't ready to admit anything, not yet. I've tried to forgive you, David continued, his voice still calm but sharp with emotion. But I don't think I can, not completely. You've crossed a line and it's hard to go back from that. It hit me harder than I thought it would. I hadn't realized how much I'd been holding on to the idea that things could go back to the way they were. That somehow he'd forget everything I had done. But David had always been the kind of person who couldn't just forget. And no matter how much I tried to pretend, he wasn't going to let me off the hook this time. I'm sorry, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I could feel them ring hollow. It wasn't the apology he wanted to hear. He wasn't looking for empty words. I don't need your apology right now, he replied, his gaze steady and unflinching. What I need is for you to see what you've done, to see how much damage you've caused. You think I don't know that you've been pretending like everything's fine. Like none of this matters, but it does, Lily, it really does. I stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. This wasn't just about a concert, or the money, or even the distance between us. It was about the fact that he didn't feel like he could trust me anymore. And no matter how much I wanted to fix it, I couldn't take back the things I'd done. I didn't mean to hurt you, I said quietly, finally feeling the sting of my own selfishness. But I knew it wasn't enough. It never would be. I know you didn't, David said, his voice softening. But it doesn't change the fact that you did. And I don't think I can keep pretending like nothing's wrong. Not anymore, and that was the truth. He wasn't going to forget what I'd done. He wasn't going to let me off the hook with a few empty apologies and promises to do better. I had crossed a line, and no matter how much I tried to justify my actions, it wasn't going to fix the damage. That night, I lay in bed next to him, staring at the ceiling. And I finally let myself feel the weight of it all, the regret, the guilt. The realization that I had pushed him too far. I hadn't been the wife he deserved. And no matter how much I wanted to make things right, I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I thought about how everything had started. How I'd gotten caught up in my own impulsiveness, my own need for escape. And how it had spiraled into something bigger than I ever imagined. I had taken him for granted, and now I was facing the consequences. The next morning, when the kids were off to their activities, David and I sat down together. It was quieter now, and the tension was still thick between us. But for the first time in weeks, we spoke openly. I wasn't ready to completely admit everything I had done. But I knew I couldn't keep pretending like nothing was wrong, not anymore. I don't know if we can fix this, I said, my voice trembling. But I'll try. I'm not perfect, David. But I want to make it right. He looked at me, and for a second, I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But maybe it was the first step. Maybe it wasn't too late. I don't know if we can either, he said softly. But I'm willing to try, as long as you are. And maybe that's the hardest part of all. Realizing that it's not enough to just say you're sorry. You have to prove it, and that's something I wasn't sure I could do. But I was going to try, even if it meant taking a long, hard look at myself. And figuring out how to fix everything I'd broken. Thank you for listening until the end. Every story holds a piece of someone's truth, and maybe a piece of your own. If this touched you in any way, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories. See you in the next video.